Okay, welcome, Victor. It's so good to
Yeah.
see you here. Let me make sure we're not muted. We're not. Okay, so we've all just seen your video of day 6, and you've been doing this now for 6 weeks. Are you going to be going out this afternoon and exercising your rights in front of Parliament again?
Yeah, that's right. I'll be out there exercising, so I plan on getting there at 2 o'clock. And yeah, I'm in my gear. I got my headband on.
You're
So
ready.
yeah, it's good. This interview will kind of get me amped for a bit of exercise this afternoon.
Yeah,
Hopefully, I see more people out there as well.
yeah, that'll be good. What's the weather like in Sydney? Is it cold and rainy like it is up here, or no?
Yeah, well, it is forecasted cold and rainy, but this morning it was quite sunny. So maybe the
Oh.
afternoon. I was thinking of posting something on Instagram, just saying, look, it's a little bit of cold, but that's not going to stop me from getting some essential exercise. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Like the police, like the post office in the United States, neither rain nor hail will stop you from your
yeah, that's
appointed
it.
rounds.
Yeah,
Okay,
in season, out of season, rain, hail, or shine.
exactly. So exercising your rights, that's such a brilliant name for what you're doing because you're right. You have to exercise those rights or they're going to be gone, just like your muscles. Um, you have had a fantastic response to what you're doing and to the fact that you're posting these videos, sharing what's happening. Have you been getting tons and tons of support from people who are writing to you and loving what you're doing?
Yeah, the response has been quite overwhelming, actually. I mean, I guess that was the goal in the beginning. The goal in the beginning was to sort of spark and inspire people to action. So I'm glad it's
Mhm.
had that effect. And yeah, the page and the social media did get to the point where I couldn't keep up with it anymore. I've got some people helping me, responding to the messages and comment and things like
Mhm.
that, but even they were were not keeping up. So the response has been overwhelmingly positive, just people saying, "Oh, great, I love what you're doing. You're inspiring us," and getting rid of the fear, which is great because that was the idea to begin with. Because when the lockdown happened and we had to sort of all stay home, what sort of bugged me the most is like, why isn't anybody saying anything? Why isn't anybody doing anything? I just thought, and maybe I was the same as everybody else is, where you're just expecting somebody else to do something and you don't really think about doing anything yourself. So when we came up with the idea, we thought, well, maybe this will spark all those that are discontent out there and all those that disagree, and give them the courage to speak out if somebody just sort of heads that spear. So I'm glad it's had that effect because that was originally what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it's sort of encouraged people, especially during this lockdown. So I feel like getting out there and getting out of your house, especially during this time, even more so is important because the lockdown is trying to keep you in. So if there's a way you can get out and express your opposition, like you sort of mentioned with Michael, I think it'll have like a double effect.
Yes, yes, it's
Mm.
incredible how we have fallen prey to that fear so quickly and so easily. I never thought that would happen. I thought people would question straight away, what are they basing this on? Where is the science to show that this lockdown is even necessary? Where is the science to show that
Mm.
coronavirus, which was only identified about a month before the lockdown started, where is the evidence to show that this is going to be such a terribly deadly disease? And the answer is none of that existed when the lockdown came in.
Yeah, and the more and more information that comes out, it's just more and more showing that the government can't really hold up their story and justify
Mm.
what they're doing, but they sort of have to. It's almost like they have to play like they're easing it off so they don't reveal the fact that they made this huge mistake to begin with. But yeah, I think that kind of boggles my mind as well because it's like, you know, it it's almost like with this coronavirus thing, the people that you expected to be, intelligent and awake and aware of what's going on have even bought into it as well. And I get that comment from a lot of people, like people they know, oh, I thought they were pretty switched on or they were quite skeptical of government. But when it comes to this coronavirus, it's like so many people have just bought into it. They're just so scared
That's it.
that, I guess fear makes people irrational.
It does. Edward Bernays, who's basically the father of modern marketing, he wrote a book called Propaganda in the 20s. I think that Adolf Hitler actually relied very highly upon that book when he started in Nazi Germany. And he
Mhm.
basically said if you can keep people in a state of fear, you can control them. And I think our government and the governments around the world and the World Health Organization and Bill Gates and all those players, they've learned that lesson really well. And I think it's time for us to learn when we've been played, when we're being manipulated. And my feeling is at this present time, we are very much being played and we're not thinking, we're simply reacting, and it's time for that to stop. So, exercising your rights comes in. How many places are you aware of? I mean, I didn't know about Canberra having exercising your rights, I knew about Perth, but how many other locations are you aware of that are actually starting to do this?
Well, the only other location I knew of was is in Perth, so there was a lady there that was going there. But I think because you know, I guess the difference is because in Sydney, like I'm committed to being there every week. And, unfortunately, most people are not like leaders, they're followers, right? So if there's
Mm,
not somebody that's there, they know is going to be there, they don't kind of want to be the one that's there and there's nobody else there.
right.
So you kind of need somebody heading things up in different locations to give the confidence for other people to go.
Yep.
So whilst there have been pockets here and there and little groups that have done it, I don't think there's anything really consistently going on in any other state at the moment. So Sydney, and it's not it's funny because the obviously the videos, make it seem like more exciting than it is, but last week was actually pretty big. Like last week there seemed to be a lot of people there, and I think because the week prior with the arrests and with Renee's story, I think that really made people upset, to
Yes.
get out and do something. Last week the police largely left us alone. I think they realize now that they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they try and stop people, that'll just make people even more upset and want to go.
Mm.
But then if they don't do anything, then people won't be scared to go out and make their voice known. So it'd be interesting this afternoon to see, especially with the weather, to see whether we'll have the opposite effect, of what they wanted to do. So I don't know, but I think the police are definitely thinking more before acting
And that's
after
what they
the
should
action they
be.
had.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are going to be streamed where whatever they do, there are going to be lots of people taking video and putting it up there live. So, like I said to Michael, they're not working in a vacuum. It's interesting, the psychology of what you said, the fact that I was actually thinking the effect would be the opposite, that people would be afraid, oh no, people got arrested last week, I'm not going today. And instead, there were a lot more people there last week. And I think it shows you that people people may be afraid, but they are more upset about injustice. And what happened when you and Renee were arrested was completely unjust. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened that day? That was two Saturdays ago, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I'll just say that, yeah, I think, yeah, some people get upset with the injustice, and I think there are two types of people because a lot of people last week were still worried that the police were going to do something. Because I was talking to them, and they were thinking, oh, they're just waiting and they're going to pounce on us. But they didn't do anything. So I'm hoping that maybe the people that were fearful last week realize, oh well, nothing's going to happen anymore, because a lot of people that I spoke to on the day were saying, oh, like this person was thinking of coming or that person, but I'm here to like got to scope it out for them first. And just before I move on, like the other thing you said was, yeah, I think it's very important that people do record their interactions with the police. I don't think people realize even the psychology that the police have now that they know they're being recorded. They will be on their best behavior, because even
Right,
though they have those body cams on them where they have to tell you they're recording you, I mean, the chances of that footage getting out, it's very rare that they release that footage. So
right.
you don't want to depend on the body cam footage of the police officer. But if you just pull out a camera and start recording your interaction, it could greatly change the outcome of that interaction, because they know they can't just get away with something.
That's right.
Um, yeah, so in terms of what happened that day, you're asking what happened leading up to my arrest?
Well, I mean, I've seen the video, and I hope that everybody watches your video. You've done a great, it's like about a 30-minute video of the whole day. But yeah,
Mhm.
what happened to precipitate the police arresting you? Do you know yet? Because to me, it looked like they had just told you to move on. You walked across the street, and all of a sudden you're under arrest. Why
Yeah,
do
well,
you
they
think
they
that
give you this
happened?
fact sheet like after you get charged. So I didn't actually get fined. So Renee got fined, because she got fined for breaching the COVID restrictions, which was what her fine was. Mine is actually a charge. So mine's a charge for not complying with a move on direction. When I read their fact sheet, because they kind of have to make a statement justifying, why they arrested you. It's like their case, right? It's like the fact sheet that the magistrate looks at. So I think what I realized is from their fact sheet, and maybe they wrote the fact sheet before reviewing all the cam footage. And remember, Sergeant Davey is from a different station to the
Right.
two officers that arrested me. So I think what happened is, when they finally approached everybody on that side of the street to try and get them to leave, and that's what sort of sparked that interaction that where the police sort of made that group happen. And I was speaking with Sergeant Davey. You see in the video that like the younger Constable Cry, he like sort of initiates the move on and he's about to enforce it. And then the senior constable doesn't say anything. And then it goes to the sergeant. But then when the conversation with the sergeant ends, you can see he allows us to just keep continuing, right?
Right.
Because he can't kind of justify moving people on or stopping people. So he says, oh, just continue. If you continue exercising, everyone else will exercise. And what I think happened is I don't think the constables that initiated the move on realized that that's what happened. So when they went away and he let us continue, then they assumed that like I had complied with the move on. I think
Right.
that's what happened. Well, that's what they're stating, but it doesn't make sense because see, Renee got arrested when she was leaving. So
Yes.
when she was leaving, I was on the other side of Parliament House. So this was like right near the end of the day when, people were starting to go home and we were saying goodbye to each other. So we thought that encounter with Sergeant David was really like the climax. And it's like, okay, well, we had that chat and now they've let us exercise. So it's like, okay, now the day is just going to finish and whatever. So Renee gets arrested on the way home. So you see in the video, like, I didn't know what was going on. I heard somebody calling me. So I go up and then I realized they had that barricade in
Yeah,
front of us.
they
So you see me
blocked
walk
you
up.
with their bodies. They
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
allow anyone
So,
through.
and you can see the two constables are on that barricade. And obviously I'm talking to Constable Cry in my video. So I don't know at that point, how did they assume that I complied with the move on? I was still around. Like my wife was still there. Like it's not like I'm gonna leave without my family. So I was there, and I think so obviously I couldn't see what was going on. So I thought, well, they blocked this side of the road, so maybe I'll just cross the road and go down and stand on the other side of the road so I can see what was happening. So me and a couple of other people, we walked away from the barricade, right? And I think they didn't really know what I was doing, right? Because I walked away, and then in the video footage, I can see them going, "Oh, where's Victor going? Like, what's happening?" They just thought I left. So I think that's where they're trying to say they thought I complied with the move on direction. So I walked back down the street to get to a traffic light, right? Because we didn't want to I didn't want to give them a reason to like arrest me or whatever, jaywalking or something. So went down to the traffic light. We waited for the green man. It was like me and this other lady that was like in black, and we were just like waiting for the green man to go green. As soon as it went green, we like dashed across the road. We're running down the other side of the road. So when I'm running down so I'm running with like maybe one or two other people. So it's not just me running down the road to try and get to the other side. I think maybe what the police thought is we were going to interfere, like we were going to run down and cross the road.
Right.
So when they saw a bunch of people running down, they obviously saw me because of the way I'm dressed. I'm very visible. So Constable Cry comes off the barricade and intercepts me. And that's why there's not much time in between when you're seeing me on the barricade, because I stopped the recording on my phone. And then as I was running, I was trying to get the live stream going, right?
Right.
So I was opening the Facebook app. And then when I ran down the street, I pressed go live, and then that's when they ran into me. So that's why you just see it straight away, like, what's going on? And then they're like, I'm warning you, you're not keeping the move on. And then senior constable just arrests me straight away. So that's why you see me asking, and obviously I'm being a little bit cheeky, but I'm asking, hey, what's the reason for the move on? Because just like 15 minutes before, the sergeant had said, oh, you're fine to continue. So
Right.
even after I spoke to the sergeant, I went and walked over in front of all the police officers, and so they saw me still there. They didn't see me leave.
I have a
So
question for you.
I
Sorry.
think there's just confusion on what happened, on
There
what's
is.
going on, the miscommunication, and then they just were worried I was going to interfere, so they tried to use that reason to arrest me.
Now, they gave you a move on across the street. You were no longer across the street. You were someplace else. So you did move on. How far do you have to go in order to, is there any kind of legal justification for saying, I gave you a move on order there, you're now here, you're not obeying the move on order?
No, there is the way I understand it works. When they give a move on direction, they have to give you a time and a location. So the location that they're saying is CBD area. So if you
So
remember
the whole area.
from the well, yeah, I mean, I guess whether or not it's reasonable enough is, if you want to dispute it and you get arrested for not complying, I guess it's up to the magistrate to decide how reasonable the move on direction is.
Hmm.
Um, but supposedly they have to give you, this is what I understand, they have to give you a time frame and they give you a location. So that's why in day 4 video, you can see him say to the 3 people that are dressed in white, you're not allowed in the CBD for the next 6 hours.
Oh, I don't remember
So
that. Yeah.
yeah, so that's how that works. So he had given me a move on from the CBD. I can't remember what the time frame was. But like I said, the sergeant had sort of cancelled it, so that's why I don't think they'd realised when they sort of stopped me
No,
on the other side of the road.
they didn't coordinate. So you're on the other side of the road and they arrest you. Did they treat you like what I saw what they did to Renee, and it was terrible. It was violent as far as I'm concerned, ripping her child out of her arms. It was
Yeah.
horrendous. I had nightmares about that, literally. I don't know how she's handling it, but when they arrested you, how did they treat you?
No, I was treated fine. See, my I joke about this. Like my arrest was kind of a bit unglamorous because every all the commotion and all the attention was on Renee, and I sort of got arrested across the other side of the road behind a paddy wagon. Nobody there actually knew I had gotten arrested. That's why people had wondered, like, oh, did I abandon the scene? Like I wasn't there, but I actually got whisked off before Renee got put into the paddy wagon, right?
Wow.
Because all the attention was on her on the other side. The only people that noticed me get arrested was like my wife and
I'm
my friend's
glad.
wife because they sort of saw me walk away from the barricade and then saw me get stopped by the police. But everybody else's attention was on Renee. Yeah, so the thing is, it's funny because you hear the senior constable say, "Oh, stop resisting," and I wasn't resisting at all, but I'm told that they just say that to sort of if they need to manhandle you, if they say that, then it can kind of justify that you were doing something, right? Because if you're not recording it and they on their body cam can say, "Oh, you're resisting," I mean, how it's your word against theirs.
Right.
So, but they no, they didn't treat me violently at all. Like they put my hands behind my back, they took my phone, and I never planned to resist or make it difficult. So when they said, get into the car, like I actually jumped in. I actually got in. I sat down. They told me to take my shoes off. I took my shoes off, and then they sort of stood in the side door of the paddy wagon, still asking me questions because you don't see that conversation anymore because it's only their body cam footage, right? Because my phone's no longer recording.
Right.
So they again saying, "Oh, you didn't comply with the move on," and I was saying, "Well, what?" I said, "The sergeant. I don't know if you realize, but the sergeant said that we could continue to exercise." So I was trying to tell them that. So I don't know what point they realized maybe they'd made a mistake. I don't know if they think that or they're sticking by their guns, but
Mm.
yeah, I got the feeling at the station that they were sort of struggling to put their fact sheet together to kind of justify what they just did.
Yeah.
But
They've
they
really
they're
done the
nice off
wrong
camera.
thing.
You know what I mean? Like they're not. I don't I don't think any of those police officers I dealt with are necessarily bad people. I think they just you know. I think the pressure is coming from on high, right,
Mm.
to enforce these draconian laws. And a lot of even the police officer that let me out of the station when I left, he didn't seem very, for the for the lockdown, and he sort of commented like, "Hey, I didn't arrest you." Like it's kind of like, "Hey, I'm not a bad guy." Like,
I
I was
didn't
saying
do
to him like,
it.
"Hey, well maybe you need to be on the team next week."
That's
So
good. So they were
yeah,
asking you questions while you were in the paddy wagon. This is my question. Coming from the United States, I know that in the US you can plead the fifth. And if the police ask you anything, you can just say, I don't answer questions or I plead the fifth. Is there something similar in Australia where you can say, I am not answering your questions?
Yeah, you can. So you obviously don't have to engage with the police. I mean, I think it's only intelligent or wise to engage with the police if you know the laws and you know your rights, because
Mm,
often people get themselves into trouble because they don't know how to interact with the police, and that's why it's very important. You'll notice that, the police in sort of the day 5 video earlier on, you notice that the police kind of get people separated and are talking to them, and they kind of had the nice facade where they're like, hey, well, we're just having a conversation, we're just talking. But but what you have to understand is the reason why they're doing that is because if they get you talking and they ask you, oh, why are you here, and all that sort of stuff, then if you admit to something, you may end up incriminating yourself, and then
right.
they'll use that as reason to fine you or do whatever. So you don't have to answer their questions. In terms of your name and your details, see, that one is is a little bit of a touchy topic, because some people believe that, because of our constitution and all these sorts of things, they think, well, the police don't even have the authority to ask for your name and your details, which I agree with. I can agree with that. But the thing is that the laws in New South Wales, at least, the police have the authority to identify you if they suspect you of something.
Right.
So that's where, Renee's sort of tact was a little bit different to mine, right? Like, my fight was not with whether or not they have my details. My goal was, if I had an interaction with the police, I wanted to show people that they could not use the COVID restrictions to stop me from doing what I was doing.
Right.
So I didn't mind. I didn't want to make it about whether they can get my details or not. So when they asked for my name and my details, I just gave it,
Yep.
right? And technically, like, legally, whether you think the law is legit or not, in New South Wales, they have the legal justification to get your name and details if they suspect you of something. So that's why Renee had that issue, because she was suspected of breaking the COVID laws. So that gave O'Donnell technically the right to get her name and her details. And I think because she didn't give her name and her details, she had, like,
An
authority
excuse.
to, yeah, to arrest her,
Mm,
right? To obtain her details. And that's why they're saying when she got her details at the station, they find her, they let her go. But obviously, I understand where they're coming from, and that's why Mick Fuller is able to get on 2GB and justify the police's actions. But obviously, even if it is justified that they can arrest you for not giving your name and your details, then the
right.
question is, did they use discretion? Is that right for them to do? Like, in the way they did it as well? Because
Yes.
even if, you suspected them of doing something, like, why target Renee out of everybody there? And why make such a big deal? Why do it in the way they did it? Like, they could have just, like, in my opinion, even if they wanted to arrest Renee, which I already think is a silly thing to do, to target a mum to arrest,
Yep.
you know, like, why do it in the way you did it? Why not just detain her, not let her leave, and just let her calm down until she's willing to jump into the paddy wagon? Why, like, rip them apart, throw her into the back, and, like, slam the door on her foot? Like
Yes.
that was completely unnecessary.
It was,
So
yeah.
it's
And
it's
I
it's just
understand that she's suing the police individually and the police station as well for what's happened. And I hope she wins. I really do. That sort of behavior should not be permitted. It was horrendous. I kind of wondered at the time, and I still do wonder now, if the reason she was targeted were twofold. One, she sort of showed up that female officer by being so nice to her and by basically making her look bad because the officer was aggressive and Renee was actually quite nice to her. And number two, she was a single mother at there. I mean, she's not a single mother. She's got a partner. She has other children, but she was a single mother there without a partner. And she had a baby, which made her very vulnerable. So I kind of wonder sometimes some people are drawn to victimizing people who they feel are powerless. And I don't know if that's putting the
Mm.
bad face on it or not, but it was my feeling from
Well,
watching that.
I mean, my opinion is, I personally think it's definitely, like, the pride of that O'Donnell
Mm.
what's she? She's an inspector, I think. I was
Oh, is
calling her a deputy
she?
officer, but she's the
Wow.
deputy officer, meaning she, like, uh, like, how it was explained to me, like, she's meant to be there just managing the police, but obviously they can make arrests too. So she was the highest rank at the time until a superintendent came over when they had Renee in the car. So in the videos, you can see a guy with like a fancier hat, and he's kind of big. I think that's a superintendent, that somebody told me. But I personally see, because if you think about it from the police's point of view, I understand people are saying, well, they target the weaker, and then the sort of the males might respond aggressively, and then it gives the police an opportunity to sort of arrest people and break something up. But I kind of feel that I think the police know that if they make it aggressive, I mean, that's what gets them in the news. That's what creates the
Mm,
PR disaster that they don't want to deal with. So I don't think, in my opinion, that's necessarily what they were intending, even though that's what happened. I have a feeling that it was mainly the pride of O'Donnell being shown up, and this person not cooperating with her in front of her constables, and now she
right.
wants to make an example of her. And because it was a pride thing, maybe she wasn't considering, how they were going about it, because she was just wanted to make this woman an example. But yeah, you can see from the video, it's definitely, I think, a pride thing. That's
Yes, it was
yeah,
obvious. It was very
by
obvious
her,
to me.
by her.
Yeah. What's
Mm.
happening with you now? You've been arrested, you've been charged. Have you been charged? Is that a criminal offense or a misdemeanor or
No, no, it's not. I think there are certain things that, like, some people are worried, if they get in trouble, it'll go on their criminal record. But as far as I understand, there are certain things that you can get charged for that don't go on your criminal record. And knowing these sorts of things, see, people, I know people that sort of, know how policing works. So that was sort of like the discussion I had prior to doing what I was doing. And I think that really helps give people confidence, which is why I'm sort of releasing my videos and sharing the knowledge that I have,
Yep.
because I think a lot of people are very, worried about, whether they'll give them a criminal record, and they're worried like if they get arrested. But like in my interview with Avi, he's saying the arrest is not the big deal. Like, it's not that scary.
Mm.
I mean, if you don't know what's going to happen, it is scary, because I was scared prior to knowing what the process is. But when somebody sort of told me about, oh, hey, this is what happens when you get arrested and whatnot, then it's like, oh, okay, well, that's not so bad. Because, when you're going into the unknown, you're like, okay, they're going to take me. What are they going to do to me? What's going to happen? How long are they going to keep me? But when like, okay, well, you get in, they're going to do some questions. They're going to, keep you there for maybe a max of 7 hours if you cooperate. Like, I knew I was getting out. So then when I went to the police station, it's just a matter of time before I get out.
Right.
And if you haven't broken any laws, then I guess you have a case to defend yourself.
How long were you
You know,
held for at the police station?
about 4.5 hours, I think.
Right,
So I went
right.
4 o'clock and went about 8:30.
Yep. Yep. And I heard that that the first time you knew that Renee had actually been arrested was at the police station because you were sort of in cells not far from each other, and the police did not want you talking to each other, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah,
Brings back shades of
yeah, I'm not
Hogan's
sure why.
Heroes.
Yeah, because remember, like, I see, the reason why I didn't know what was going on when Renee got arrested is because I was walking and talking. Because after Sergeant Davies said, "Yeah, just continue as you were," so then I was like walking and talking with somebody at the other side of Parliament House, because there was still a group of people talking in the middle to Sergeant Davey. So I
Mm,
wasn't sort of pacing up the whole area. So because I was talking with people, I was sort of distracted, and I distinctly remember saying goodbye to Renee, because Renee said, "Oh, I'm going to take my son home." It's like, "Oh, it was fun." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll see you later. Maybe I'll see you again sometime." So I thought she had already left. So when something went on, my first thought was maybe a guy had got an interaction with the police and got aggressive, and then women were screaming because he was getting arrested. That was my initial thought,
right.
until I realized a mum. And then I was thinking, well, which mum was getting arrested? Because everyone that I met there was very gentle, very polite. You can see even when we had the interaction with the police, nobody's getting aggressive. Like, I think I kind of set the tone, right?
Yep.
So all the interactions with the police that whole day were all pleasant, nobody being rude, nobody getting upset, and people just walking. It was very peaceful. So when I saw her at the police station, that's when I called out to her and I said, I didn't know you got arrested, all the people, because I thought you'd already left. So then when I watched the
Surprise!
video later, that's when I realized, like, O'Donnell actually came back for her.
Mm.
See,
She was
this is what people don't
targeted.
realize.
Yeah.
She was what?
She was targeted. I think, from
Well, that's
looking at that
yeah.
video. Yeah.
Well, people don't realize that she was actually leaving. First of all, she was on her way. She actually tried to cross the road when they detained her. They pulled her back. But a lot of people don't realize as well that the interaction between when she's talking with the O'Donnell and then when she's getting pulled and getting arrested are actually two different events.
Yeah.
It's not like one led to the other. There was actually the interaction and then half an hour between those, which is when she's still walking with her son, and then that when that encounter with Sergeant Davy happens, where he's kind of saying, "Okay, well, you guys are all good to keep exercising."
Hmm.
So half an hour later is when she's trying to leave. Sergeant O'Donnell, you can hear her in the first video saying, "I'm going to get permission to arrest you." So she's gone away, asked for permission to go ahead with this arrest. Half an hour later, then come for her, tried to get her name and details again, hasn't, and then that's why she decides to arrest her. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's like half an hour later, it's like been brewing and thinking about it and
She's
considering
getting
whether or not this is
angry.
something serious
Yeah.
and
But
still go ahead with. Yeah.
the role of the police should be to protect the public from criminals. And I feel that the way that the sergeant acted in this situation was not taking that role seriously at all. Are you okay if we go to a few questions from people who are watching? Because there
Yeah,
are
sure,
some
no
good
problem.
ones.
So I've got to, what's the time? It's about 11. So I've got till about
11:05.
12:30.
Okay,
So,
no worries. Well, we
but
might talk
I
just
might
for
just
another.
mention a few other things while
Sure,
you
go ahead.
skim through the questions, um, because there's a couple. There seems to be a couple of reoccurring sort of objections or criticisms of Renee that I just sort of want to touch on.
Good.
So one is I think if people understand that the two encounters are 30 minutes apart, then they will realize that the reaction from the inspector is a lot more unwarranted because your sergeant has already sort of came and talked to everyone. Like you know why people are there. They're
Mm.
exercising. Like what are you suspecting her of that made you target her, and why her out of everything? That's what's so
Mm.
crazy because it's hard to believe that it wasn't just pride. Because if you wanted to make an example of somebody, why would you make an example of a woman who's with a 4-year-old son there? I mean, there's so many other guys that you could have arrested there
Right.
to make an example of somebody. So the reason why I think it's because of their interaction. But also people will say, they'll say like, well, why did she bring her child to what they're calling an illegal protest? And the thing is, like, I think you've mentioned it as well. I mean, people bring their children to the Mardi Gras. People bring their children to, the climate protests. People bring their children to all sorts of things. But now all of a sudden, if you bring your child to something, you're an irresponsible parent. And the thing is, obviously you don't expect if you don't expect things to get violent, obviously you're happy to bring your children along. And the only reason why things get violent is because there are anti-protesters there that might do something. But if there's no, I mean, nobody's gonna anti-protest a lockdown protest because it's funny that it's like if you're gonna protest us being out here, you're obviously being a bit of a hypocrite coming out here yourself to protest us. So there's no anti-protesters there. So what are the police? It's like Mick Fuller on 2GB. He's trying to say, well, why would you bring your children to an illegal protest? But the only danger there was the police. So
That's right.
is he saying like, well, should we be scared then of the police's reaction when we're going out and peacefully walking and expressing an opinion? So obviously she brought her child. There was a family there that had 9 children that kind of were there for an hour. I've seen them before. And obviously I've got my 5 children there. So if you don't expect it to be violent, of course, you can bring your children along. And the last thing I just want to say about Renee's situation is one thing that Mick Fuller said was, oh, all of a sudden she just became hysterical, in the way she reacted. And it's like, I mean, what do you expect?
Oops.
Never been to any sort of protest before, let alone just walking with a sign with her son. She has no idea like what the police are going to do to her child. She's never been arrested before. You're dragging her violently into the back of a car. I mean, how do you expect somebody like that to react? I mean, do people honestly think that she should have just been calm? I mean, obviously she's breaking down, freaking out because she has no idea
Mm.
what's about to happen. And I just think it's completely unwarranted for people to say, oh, why didn't she just comply? Why was she
Yeah.
acting so angry and shouting? because I think any rational person would do the same that has no idea what's about to happen to them.
Absolutely.
You know,
And
I was
it
very
wasn't,
different. I knew what was going to happen to me, so I wasn't scared. You know.
yep. And it wasn't just her getting hysterical, her child was hysterical. And as a mother, you want to protect that child. And when someone that you don't know, you have no idea who they are, physically pulls that child out of your arms and takes them away, you don't know what's happening with them, you have no idea who's going to
Yeah.
protect them. I would have been exactly the same, and I think any mother or father would have been exactly the same. And the fact that they targeted and victimized a woman with a young child and no partner with her to protect her and protect that child, I think is more than cruel. It should be illegal. And I think that whatever her name is, Constable O'Donnell, she should be up on charges for that, what she did. But I don't know enough about the law to
Yeah, I
say
definitely
that.
hope that they make an
Yeah.
example of all of them.
Yep.
But yeah, absolutely. And this whole idea that she's using her child as a human
Mm,
shield, it's like, no, like I think the natural thing is when your child is crying, you pick them up. I
that's
mean,
right.
you know
That's
what I
right.
mean? Like and it's like human shield from who? From the police? I mean, do you think the police are going to beat her or something like that to use as a human shield? I mean, if they're just peacefully detaining her, then what does it matter if she picks up her crying 4-year-old? I
Exactly.
mean, it's all pretty crazy. I hope it all comes out in the wash because when I listened to that interview between Ben Fordham and Mick Fuller, just made me so angry, like just how they just blatantly playing the politics and just making her the bad guy and the way they try and paint it. And it's funny, he even said in that interview, "Oh, I hope she pleads not guilty so otherwise the body cam footage will be released." Hey, I'd love it if that body cam footage gets released. I'm sure Mick Fuller didn't review, Sergeant Davies' body cam footage,
I
right?
wonder if it's
I'm
going to
sure he didn't view any of
disappear.
it. He just got the brief, right? He just got told whatever they told him,
That's it.
you
That's what
know?
most people in the media do. They just report what they're told. So
Yeah.
now, a lot of people are asking if we on the AVN can put up on the page a list of instructions about what you can do. Someone here, I'm not going to point them out by name, has actually said that her husband or partner is a criminal lawyer. So I think it would be really useful for us to have a list of instructions that can be put up on our page for what to do in case the police decide to arrest you or question you. Do you have any, other than what you've already said, do you have any pointers for people about what they can do? We're going to try and get some from a legal practitioner, but in the meantime, do you have anything that you want to say to someone who's faced with that situation?
Well, there's nothing additional I want to say other than what's in my videos already. I really don't. I've never. I'm not really setting out in what I'm doing to put myself as an expert, an
Mm,
expert on health or statistics, or, I'm trying to point people to who are the experts. And it's the same with legal things. I don't want people to get the idea that I'm like some expert lawyer or expert. You know, I I just sort of am promoting, hey, if you know your rights and you know the legalities around it, that will empower you to stand up for them.
yep.
And so I went into this situation knowing, through the people I know and people I've talked to, what the laws were around, the COVID restrictions, what the laws were around, um, move on directions, because we were talking about, hey, this is probably how the police would deal with it. So that's why
You
those are the
knew.
things I was educating people about because they were relevant to this situation.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think the only thing you got to be careful of, as I understand it, like obviously you can get in trouble for giving people legal advice, but the way I understand it is when you give legal advice to a specific person in a specific scenario, saying this is what you should do,
Right.
but it's not legal advice when you're just telling people like, hey, this is how it works.
And
Then
what
it's
your
just
rights
general
are.
advice, right?
Mm.
So
We will get a lawyer to actually write us some information that we can put out there generally for people who are going to be going to the rallies next week. Are you planning on going to the Sydney rally before your exercise session?
Well, funnily enough, I just coincidentally happen to want to extend my exercising hours next week. So I don't know if that was a coincidence or what. Like, I decided to go exercise at 12 o'clock that day, and there happened to be a protest on the same day.
You can't have too much good exercise, Victor. I think that's a great idea.
I know. So Yeah, yeah. So I will be there. I'm glad they did it on the same day because like I can't do Sundays. I would have liked it to be at the same time, but
Mm,
I think obviously I think their event was planned way in advance, right? It's the same time all over the world.
yes, it
So
was.
yeah, but I'll definitely try and make it there. And I think even Michael Sims has asked me to say a few words when they're having speeches. So
Oh, good, good.
think about what to say. Yeah,
Oh,
try and motivate people.
I'm sure you'll find something. You're quite good with words. Michelle Bell has just asked, is it New South Wales that has a police permit for May 30th? And yes, it is. New South Wales has a permit. So I think that will make it more difficult for the police to actually do anything against the people who are there, though I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but we're
Yeah, and
hoping.
I think people have to understand as well that the police are state-based, right? So there's different laws for different police in different state, and the COVID restrictions are state-based.
Mm.
So you don't want to assume that just because something is allowed in one state, it's allowed in another state. Like I don't know which state it was, but I think there was a state that actually had a distance from your home that was allowed. So you wouldn't be
Queensland.
able to use.
Queensland, you couldn't
Yeah,
travel
see, there
more
you
than
go.
50 kilometers from your home. And Queensland has extended their COVID restrictions. They said August 17th, but then the Premier came out and said sometime in September. So they're locking the state down for a very long time. And Pauline Hanson is actually engaged a pro bono constitutional attorney to take the Premier of Queensland to the High Court over these restrictions. So I'm hoping that there will
Oh
be a
wow,
result
cool.
out of that. Yeah. So it's great.
Yeah, so if they realize it's state-based, yeah, that's just something important. And I think now that see, the thing is, the law used to be that you needed a reasonable excuse to leave your home, but now that outdoor gatherings of 10 are allowed, there's really no way for the police to enforce it anymore. That's why I think last week they just left us alone because
Mm,
if you, and this is what people didn't understand. Like people see, if you watch the day 5 video and a lot of comments on it, like you see there's a lot of comments and people saying, oh, why was it reasonable for you to exercise in the city? Why not just rest? Why travel so far to exercise? Obviously it's unreasonable. But what people have to understand is the law is not about how reasonable your exercise is.
mm,
It's that exercise is the reason why you can leave your home. See, people misunderstand, like they think I have to justify why I'm exercising the way I am, but it's not. The laws were about reasonable excuses to leave your place of residence.
yeah.
So if you had a reasonable excuse, you could leave. It wasn't about like what you were doing for exercise, how you were doing, where you were doing it. You just had an excuse to leave your home.
That's right.
Yeah.
No distance was needed. We've got another question. Michelle is asking any other states. Michelle, look at the top of the post here because we've got all the locations except Hobart, which I will add later. Michelle again is asking, did you get charged or get a fine, or are you getting a summons to go to court, Victor?
Yeah, so I don't know if those are the same. I didn't get fined, so I
Mm,
wasn't issued a fine. Renee was issued a fine, so that was how they justified arresting her. I was charged with not complying with a move on direction, and I don't know if that's what you call it. It's like a court summons. I've got a court attendance notice, and yeah, that's for the 29th of July. I think that's when people tell me that's when you plead guilty or not guilty. That's not actually when your hearing is, I think. It's just you
right.
plead guilty or not guilty, and then they
Okay.
set a hearing date. So in the
Okay.
meantime, I haven't decided yet. I mean, I don't know if I represent myself or I try and get a lawyer on board because I feel like it's good if we take action and people can support like legal action to take, to make an example of the police because if it makes an example of them, then they'll think twice next time they do this to somebody else,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so.
Have you thought about contacting that solicitor who her name is on our page, Serene, and she is looking to help people not in your situation, but looking to help people who've had problems with their jobs because they've chosen not to vaccinate, especially people in aged care. But she might have some assistance for you, and she's doing everything, as far as I know, pro bono. So she might be worth contacting and just seeing if she can represent you or refer you to someone else who might be able to represent you, because you shouldn't have to spend a fortune to prove your innocence when you've got so much evidence that you're innocent. Yeah, so I think
Yeah, I
that,
mean, I definitely add it to the list, but
yeah,
I don't think it's so much about because I think you have to defend yourself from the charge, but then I think it's whether you take action against the police or what they did. That's
right.
probably what will require more resources.
Yep.
But I'm not too sure yet, so that's why I
Okay.
haven't really asked for money because I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Okay, no worries. Keep in touch with us
Mm,
about that because we can certainly help you with advertising that and yeah, and assistance. So,
appreciate that.
yeah. Jane Payne says she was referring to Renee. She was exercising her rights. Bring the kids, and that's true. And you'd been doing this for weeks before that, and there'd never been an incident or a problem. So why would anyone have expected that there would have been one simply from exercising in front of Parliament House? That's all you were doing was walking up and down, and nobody would have
And what's
expected
crazy as
that.
well is, and I sort of mentioned this to Avi when he interviewed me, is, obviously when you watch the videos, they're the highlights. So it seems like things are more happening than they are.
Hmm.
But for anyone that's been to a live event, it's always not as exciting as the media that comes out of it looks like. So if you were there on the day, on day 5, if you were actually there and saw how many people were there exercising and what the environment like that's why that was why like I live streamed a few times, right? Because I live streamed the first time. It's like, okay, well, I was talking to people and nothing's really happening, so I stopped that live stream. And then they came and approached us. So I'm like, oh, I better start a live stream again. And then after that sort of happened, you see me comment at the end of that live stream, oh, that's probably the peak of the police activity. It's probably
Little did
that's
you
the end of the
know.
day. So I signed off. It's like, oh, that's probably how it's gonna finish, right? Because it was already like 3:45 or something. Yeah, so I never expected there
Mm.
to be arrests and stuff, especially when you were there on the day. It was so peaceful. I don't know. That's why I was so I didn't know what had made that situation escalate,
Mm.
because the interactions with the police were so calm and peaceful.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
shouldn't
wonder
have
if
happened.
that Officer O'Donnell might have been the reason, but I mean, we don't know what went on behind the scenes. It would be good to know. So let me just see. This is from Lindsay, and she or he, sorry, is talking about the protest in Melbourne the same day that there were arrests in Sydney. There were also at least 2 arrests in Melbourne, and quite a few people were pepper sprayed. And she's saying that the police deliberately provoked the peaceful protesters. And I don't know if you've watched the video of that day, but again, they were breaking up. The crowd was breaking up. It had gone on for a couple of hours, and everybody was starting to leave, and the police just came in a long line out of nowhere and grabbed people and arrested them. So again, you have to wonder why the police are doing this. Is there someone at the top saying, okay, this has gone on long enough, make it stop? Or is it just
Mm,
them on their own bet? And I don't know the answer to that, but it is kind of
yeah, I
crazy.
don't know either. And that protest in Melbourne was actually the day after.
Oh,
So
sorry. Yeah.
I was exercising on the Saturday,
Right.
and then there was a small group. So because I think of Renee's thing, that sort of made people want to go out on the Sunday. So there was a group Sunday outside Parliament House, and that's the one that the media covered, right? And
Right.
I wasn't there on Sunday, and then the Melbourne one that was planned, which was the one that got quite violent and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, it would be great to. I mean, it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall, like when Mick Fuller's speaking with all his inspectors or whatever, deciding what to do. Because you kind of think, were they thinking, well, if we come down heavy-handed, then people will be too fearful to do that? I guess that's your gamble, right? It's like,
It
well,
is.
maybe they thought if we did something, that will make people not want to do it.
Mm.
But what they didn't realize is if they do something, people get even more upset with how the police are treating people and treating it. And so yeah, I don't know how they walk that fine line. Hey, how they decide how to react to something.
I don't think they have the psychology right because, as we've seen just from the lockdown with COVID, the interest in this issue of mass vaccination and mandatory vaccination has gone ballistic. Thousands more people are following our pages, and we're getting so many more inquiries. We also are having trouble getting through all of them because there are so many people wanting information and wanting help. So it's had the opposite effect, just like I believe you're saying that the fact that there were these arrests also had an opposite effect and made more people interested in going out. And I think it's because we see that the threat is real.
Hmm.
While we're sitting at home and sheltering in place, we can convince ourselves that this is all just going to pass. It's all going to be fine. We'll be going back to normal soon. And when we see things like this, we realize that's not necessarily the case. Now, you have 5 children with a sixth on the
Yes.
way
Yep. Hmm.
very soon. And you had all 5 of your children and your wife with you. And I have a question that's come to me as a parent of 4, which is, first of all, do your children know why you're going out and doing this? And do you think it's really important to teach our children how to stand up for their rights and what it means to be an activist? If you consider yourself an activist, I don't know. So,
Yeah, well, like I said in our previous interview, yeah, everybody should be an activist,
mm,
in a sense. And it's funny as well because when we're talking about our people being locked at home, and I think when you were interviewing Michael, somebody made the comment like, "Oh, it was a bad idea to sort of lock intelligent people at home. They have time to think and reflect on." Because I feel like I'm not saying I'm super intelligent. What I'm saying is that that's sort of what happened in my case, in the sense that everything got cancelled. All my children's stuff got cancelled, so I was like busy with life, right? And then all of a sudden the lockdown happens. It just makes you sit at home mulling like, what can I do about this? Like how do I resist? So maybe there's just all people at home scheming, like, and doing their research and stuff like that.
yep,
Because I feel like that was definitely the case with me. So yeah, with my children, I'm definitely an advocate of, teaching your children as young as possible, training them up and instilling the right values in them and stuff like that. And
yep.
it's funny. People are so hypocritical, right? Because they say, oh, people brainwashing their children, or whatever. Everybody teaches their children what to do. Like, you don't think the lefties and the communists are teaching their children like to do whatever they do, right?
Mm,
So everybody teaches their children and tries to instill their values in them. That's just something you do as parents.
yep.
I think if you're crazy if you just leave that to, when they, people would just say, oh, when they ask me about it, or, they avoid the conversations until as late as possible. You even have people saying about their children, oh, they don't talk about the birds and the bees with their children until really late. And it's like, I'm the total opposite. I think I try and teach them as much as I can from as early on. So for my children that are older, that do understand, like my oldest is 9 years old, so he kind of understands better. But yeah, we'll
mm.
explain to him, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going about it. Be careful when you talk to the police, because you don't want to just incriminate yourself or your mum and
Good
dad.
on you. Yeah.
So they go full well knowing what we believe and everything. Yeah.
How did they react when you were arrested? Did they even know?
Yeah, they did know. Yeah, they were quite sad. Like
Oh,
when Renee was getting arrested, they were freaking out a little bit because they weren't sure what was going on, right?
mm,
So in that sense, they're still a bit naive to thinking, oh, police are going to be nice and all that sort of stuff. So I think at first they were a little worried, but
mm.
obviously with my wife knowing what was going on, and we had talked about, hey, this is what would happen if I got arrested. This is how you'd get home, and this is how I'll be getting out, so it's nothing to worry about. So she was just able to calm them down and just say,
Good.
oh, look, it's okay, Dad's gonna get home and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. It's good that you had your wife there with you to take care of the kids when that happened. I mean, it would have been a shock, even though you were calm and everything, it still would have been a big surprise to you to have gotten arrested. Looking at the video and looking at how there was no provocation, and as far as I could see, no reason for you to be arrested, it would have been a big surprise. So I'm glad you came through it well. I'm glad you kept your sense of humor, which is wonderful. And I'm glad that this whole event, it's getting attention, not just in Australia, but worldwide. I see on Twitter and on
Is it?
Facebook. Oh, yeah, there are plenty of people talking about, not so much about your arrest, but Renee's arrest. That's been covered
All right,
pretty
yeah.
well worldwide, but people have included you too. And I don't know if you can see on your website if you're getting a lot of hits from overseas, but I would think you probably are. So,
Oh,
um,
I should check it out. Actually, I haven't really keep track of the analytics as much as I should.
yeah, I know
Oh,
that
but
feeling.
that's good. Yeah, it is funny seeing it. It's sort of like the exercising my rights and getting out and exercising with a sign, like that sort of trend is taking off, and that's great because like, that's sort of what we set out to do. We just my friend was always saying, oh, it'd be funny if one day you just see people like wearing a headband at the shops or something like that. They've got their headband on because it's like, hey, well, I'm out exercise. I was saying to RV, like, hey, well, if exercising is what makes me free, then I'm exercising all the time.
Exactly. And I bet you will see that too. It doesn't take long for a good idea to spread. I just want to point out to people that Calvin Milroy has posted a link to the police powers in Victoria. So for those who are going to be going to the Melbourne protest, that's probably a good thing for you to download and read. It's a really good idea. Uh, in general,
Yeah, I think for
because
the people in Sydney as well, it's good for them to know that they actually have a permit. So it sounds like the police, I don't know, because I mean, I never thought a permit for a protest would get approved during this time, but maybe because of the political climate and what's happened with Renee, that they've allowed it because they know maybe people are doing it anyway, so
yes.
may as well do it safely. So, but for the people in Sydney, they definitely don't have to be worried about going out on the 30th because that's actually approved by the police.
That's right. That's right. It's much better. Queensland is still a bit of a problem, but Michelle Bell is saying to you, Victor, get a criminal lawyer to represent you regardless of what you are going to do. That's her advice. So you may want to contact her and speak with her about that. Um, and Deanne said, no
Yeah, that's
one.
definitely what people have been telling me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good to have representation, especially if you can get it pro bono. And I think one thing the AVN has been begging for pro bono lawyers for years and not getting any because I think a lot of lawyers are afraid of this issue. But there are lawyers out there who are seeing what's happening and they themselves are getting quite frightened of the powers that the government is taking for itself. So I think that there are a lot of lawyers out there now who are willing and actually eager to help with these sorts of things. We're getting contacted more and more often by lawyers who don't necessarily want to be public, but who want to help. So, yeah, if you are having trouble, let us know. We can probably put you in touch with someone. Sandra says, I hope someone can donate
Mm.
legal help to you, Victor. And that's exactly the case. Um, Let me
Yeah, I
just
think in
see.
your field as well, I mean, you guys are definitely pioneers in going against vaccinations. It's always a very touchy topic. So, like, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you guys have stuck with it, and fighting for the rights for people to have health freedom. And I think as as they try and crack down on the flu shot and the coronavirus shot, you probably have more and more influence as people wake up to what's going on,
Yes.
and the authoritarianism that's going on there with our health.
There's a question here you may or may not be able to answer, Victor. It's from Julia. Can you legally video police or only when they address you?
Yeah, you can absolutely legally film police. So as far as I understand, in a public place, you can record. People don't have the right to tell you not that you can't record them in a public place. They can only say that like in a private property or private phone calls and things like that. But when you're out in public, if somebody says, "Well, I don't want you recording me," they don't have the right to say that. You can
Okay.
record whatever you want out in a public place. Now, if you're at a shopping center or something, and then the shopping management says, "Well, we don't want you to record here," that's private property, right?
And that's different.
So that's why, because police are public servants, they cannot tell you that you can't record. But once you're arrested, this is what I understand. Once you're arrested, then they can take things off you because say it's evidence. So that's when they can take the cameras off you and take your mobile phone off you and things like that. And somebody had told me like you want to make sure that your phone has like an auto lock screen
Yep.
because if your phone doesn't lock, then obviously they can tamper with the footage in there and delete it or get into your phone, and that's what
Right.
you definitely don't want.
Good
So
point.
that's the risk. If you're recording with your phone, obviously if they take it, it's still open, but if they stop the recording, then at least if the phone locks after a minute or
Mm.
something, you don't want it to have it to never lock.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah.
I have to, on that point, I have to say that when I go to the protest next week, I'm setting my phone to factory settings and getting rid of everything. I'm backing it up and getting rid of everything so that if by any chance they do access it, they won't have any information in there. My understanding, and I could be wrong, is that the police have the power to demand that you give them your password and they can access the information on your phone. I don't know if that's right. I'd love to get some advice on that, but I don't want my
Yeah, I mean,
information to be accessed.
no, I was told that they can't.
Oh, okay, good.
That's what
Yeah.
I was told, but I don't know. whether they, I mean, yeah, obviously it comes down to whether they think they have the authority or not, and whether you comply. Because
Yep.
obviously you can, it's like in Renee's case, right? You can not comply with something that they technically may have legal authority to do.
Mm.
And it's just up to you what hill you want to die on, right? What fight you want to fight. But that's probably something worth fighting for. Like
Yep.
you'd never want somebody to access your phone.
No, pick
That's
your
like,
battles. But if I
yeah,
wipe
that's
it,
like, yeah, this thing is like the closest thing to getting into your mind, right? There's like everything. You can find out anything about somebody through their phone. It's like,
oh, that is so true. So that's why I'm wiping
yeah.
mine. It's going to be factory settings. The only thing I'm going to be is logged on to Facebook so that I can stream to Facebook the whole time. And I'll have my backup
Yeah, yeah.
batteries with me too. um,
Yes, yes.
so, okay, I'm just getting something here from Anna Stancom. Victor, please contact me. I'm taking my COVID fine to court. Obviously, she's been fined too. I have an awesome lawyer that wants it as a test case for these illegal fines. She is happy to represent others. So you may want to contact her. You'll see her in the comments. Um,
Oh, great. Yep.
I've also
Yeah.
got a
Oh, if you can send me a message as well, if you can just message the page and just give me the details of the lawyer, I'm kind of putting a short list together for
that's
myself to contact people.
great idea, Anna. It's exercising my rights on Facebook. Nathan is asking a very interesting question. Hey, Victor, will you be planning on doing a sermon on vaccinations? You may have already done one. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I haven't preached a sermon specifically on vaccinations because one is if I did, it would sort of go into the science of it all, and I'm not an expert on the science of vaccines. And I guess when it comes to vaccines, yeah, I guess it just comes down to the fact that I probably don't think I have enough material to fill like a 45-minute sermon, because at the end of the day, I don't believe vaccinations are sinful. I just believe people have the choice. I personally don't do it because I don't think they're a good idea and the risks don't outweigh the benefits. So, I personally think there are better ways to build your immune system. But because it's freedom of choice, like medications are not bad in and of themselves. People have to decide, whether that toxin they want to take in, it gives them a benefit that
Yep,
outweighs the risk.
yep.
So, yeah, so probably because, uh, yeah, that's all I can say really. It's just I don't really feel like I have enough material to dedicate a whole sermon to it. I just have a position on it.
Oh my God, I could talk for 10 hours on it. Do you ever have guest
Yeah,
sermons,
yeah.
Victor?
Well, actually, that probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Like, like on a separate night. I mean, those are the sort of things I do think about organizing for my church, like having information nights where you may have a guest speaker
Let's
on a
see.
topic that isn't like, it's like not a Bible topic, just
Yep.
like a topic of general interest. So, yeah, that'd be cool if I could have you come and have a bit of a talk, and they can meet you as well. I think a lot of people in my church would probably want to meet you.
Oh, I'd love to meet you and your family. That would be wonderful. I've just heard from one of the people who has a lawyer in her family who said that the police do not have the power to access your phone in New South Wales. So that's really good to know. So no need to wipe your phones. Just make sure they lock so that nothing happens by accident. Uh, and Sally Ann Clark has said maybe you can exercise with Pete Evans. I don't know if you thought about that, but he doesn't live far from Sydney, so that might be an idea too. And you can
Oh,
announce
doesn't he?
that.
Oh,
No, I forget where. He's
yeah.
somewhere on the northern beaches, I think, but I could be wrong. So not that far. So that would be a
Oh, there
really
you go.
good
He's on the
thing.
expensive side of town. I'm
Yeah.
on the cheaper side of town, all the way out west.
Well, his kitchen rules, you know.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I think we've come to the end of the questions, and it has been, as always, Victor, an absolute pleasure speaking with you and speaking with Michael. Hope you have a great afternoon and that the weather holds good for you. And yeah,
Oh,
I would
thank
love
you.
to meet you one day. I'll get down to Sydney and we'll definitely meet up. So until then, is there anything that you wanted to say before we finish up to everybody watching?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll just tell everyone, hey, don't. I always get what's the word? Don't get discouraged
Mm,
because of the way things are going. The way things are going is because we're not doing anything. So I think we've been too complacent. I think people just get comfortable complaining with the way things are. So you should channel that frustration to do something rather than just yelling at the TV screen. And don't underestimate that one person can make a difference. It only takes a spark to get a fire going. So you just got to get doing something, and you'll inspire others to do it as well. So I hope that's what this movement has sort of done, because that's what I
Mm.
sort of went out to do, is hopefully inspire other people to get involved, to do something, and to speak out. And if enough of us do, we will make a difference.
We will, and we are. And before I let you go, and you're probably sick of this by now, but I've got to ask you, say your tagline, please.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. And always remember, muscles are like rights. If you don't use them, you lose them.
That's beautiful. Best line ever. Thank you so much, Victor. Have a good day, and I will speak with you soon, I'm sure. And thank you, everyone, for watching Under the Wire today. Take care and see you next week. Bye bye.
Thanks for having me, Meryl. Bye.
Thanks.